For the sprocket, the stock is a 16 tooth. I swapped mine down to a 15 tooth from Sprocket Center. The part number was 28401RD and you select 15 tooth. This gives a bit more lower speed control, and I can run the bike with a clutch out at around 7 miles an hour with no throttle without stalling at first. I've talked to more aggressive riders of these bikes who go down to a 14 tooth. With the 15, you're not giving much in the road and top end, and let's face it, 6 really should be taller anyway. I know they made first and second gear shorter on the 2018 model. In my opinion, they really should have made 6 taller, and then just put a 15 tooth sprocket on the XCX models. Even on the highway at 75 miles an hour, it's only spinning about 5% more RPM than the old unit. But because of the gearing change, that spinning is easier, so I haven't noticed a change in fuel mileage. When changing the sprocket, do replace the tab washer. On mine, it's part number T1180328. Yeah, it's a $12 washer, which is almost as much as a sprocket costs. But the sprocket nut tends to come loose, and a fresh washer, properly bent, should hold the nut even if loose. A reused washer could fatigue and allow the nut to spin off. There's not a lot of spline that sits in there, so if the nut turns at all, that washer may come out of the splines. Keep in mind when doing the sprocket, the transmission must be in neutral to avoid damage, and you need to strap down the rear wheel pretty good to get the correct torque on there. If you're not comfortable with that, have a shop do it with an air ratchet and a proper motorcycle lift. Make sure you don't damage spokes when doing this, and I would not recommend putting a block between the spokes and the swing arm like you can on a cast wheel. You'll also notice in the video, I've cut back the sprocket cover behind the shaft that links the shift lever to the transmission. This allows for easier cleaning, lubrication, and inspection of the sprocket. For the seat, I'm running the Triumph Low Factory seat. It's not as comfortable as stock. It's a bit firmer and thinner, but I'm happy with it. I've done some really big mile days on this with no issues. You could probably also have a local shop pull the cover with the stock seat and then reapply a thinner foam. Up under the tank and seat, I've done a few things. One, I replaced the stock air filter with a K&N unit. These flow better, and you can go a long time without cleaning and re-oiling them. More essentially, though, is to get a PreFilter. Unifilter out of Australia makes a unit that replaces the stock intake snorkel, which sits under the seat. It catches virtually all of the dust and debris, and it can be swapped out very quickly without pulling the gas tank. It's a bit tough to get in and out of the airbox inlet, but you'll get the hang of it. Also, while it's out, you can use a flashlight to take a peek into the airbox. Every time I do this, it's still pristine in there. If you do get one, you may actually want to get 2. So you pull the dirty one and pop a clean one in right away, while the other is being cleaned, dried, and re-oiled. I only got one, but regret that and plan to buy a second one. With the PreFilter in, you also get back extra space where the snorkel used to sit. That's where I store a spare tube. CJ Designs in the US usually has the filters in stock, and it's a great small rider-owned shop to support. Now, the stock battery is heavy and old school. I replaced mine with a WPS lithium unit. This will take somewhere between 7 and 10 pounds off the weight of the bike, but it feels like more than that because it's up pretty high. I do wish Triumph would use the lithium battery stock, modify the airbox, and put both up higher under a split fuel tank, and then use the space to move the tank back down towards the seat. The bike would ride a lot better that way. And pulling the tank to get at the air filter doesn't scream ADV bike to me. If you do go with a lithium battery, they are smaller, so you'll have to modify the strap that holds it down. I was able to just fold mine over itself in a U-shape and weave a few bar locks through there to hold it in place. Also, lithium batteries don't discharge quick when stored, so if you only ride every once in a while, you probably won't need a trickle charger. But if you do need a trickle charger, you might need one that's compatible with lithium batteries. Also, if you leave them in very cold environments, they may not crank the bike unless you allow them to flow a bit by turning on the key for 30 seconds or so before trying to start the bike. This warms the battery a bit and lets the electrons flow. I've never seen any hint of starting issues, even riding in the mid-30s Fahrenheit in Wyoming last year. I think it would have to be really cold to create an issue. But do your research. I wouldn't want you left standing on the top of a mountain with a bike that won't start. For luggage, I'm running a set of Giant Loop's Siskiyou soft bags. These are super durable and work well for all my camping and travel gear. They do a good job of protecting the bike in a tip over and won't dent like aluminum panniers. They're also very light, and I don't run pannier frames underneath, so it's a good overall lightweight setup. I do connect them to the passenger footrests. I may change this. I don't ride too up, and I'm thinking of cutting off the passenger peg rests. They can pinch a leg if you don't get clear in a tip over, and can, in rare cases, bend and tweak the frame in a drop. I'm still undecided. If I do make a change, I'll bolt on a support for the front of the luggage connection, just a bit behind where the stock passenger rests sit. The panniers themselves are good. Front pockets can be used to hold things you want handy, such as water bottles, bear spray, or other means for protection when you're out in the wild. They're where I put my gloves when I'm off the bike too. Opening the lid on the main bag, you'll have a mesh pocket in the top. You will get dust in here in the desert, so choose the types of things that you put in here carefully. For me, I keep a flashlight, first aid kit, and a few other small items in Ziplocs in there. In the main compartment, you get internal dry bags, so you can put some things in the dry bags like your tent clothing, sleeping bags, etc. And keep some things out like a spare tube and a shovel, sneakers. The things outside the dry bags may get wet in a deep water crossing or a downpour, so just keep that in mind, but I've never had an issue. On the Tiger, the stock Siskiyous didn't sit well over the passenger grab rails. I just cut them to fit with a P-shaped cutout on each side. I then had a local upholstery shop trim them out with some material. To add a bit more heat shielding to the bags on the exhaust side, I added a few layers of a gold heat-reflecting aluminum adhesive foil that's designed for wrapping auto intake systems. It's probably unnecessary, but it adds a bit of both thermal and some abrasion protection, on top of the 2 heat shields that Giant Loop supplied. Using a cable lock, you can lock these bags right to the bike through the grab handles, with the excess cable allowing you to lock your helmet and other stuff on there. Small TSA cable locks from Amazon can also be used on the bag's main compartment buckles to deter opportunist thieves. The ones I use are part number B003EM3D6E. A determined thief will cut through thick steel chain if they want your bike or gear, so soft bags or even hard cases aren't that secure if someone with a knife or pry bar really wants to get in. Moving to the top box, it's a small Bumot unit from ADV Motorrad. It's aluminum, fairly thick, and a bit heavy. I like it because it's solid and has 2 latches, so it protects and secures my DSLR camera well. It can be removed quickly without tools from an internal release setup when you don't want it on there. I align the inside of the box on the bottom and sides with a foam material to soften vibration for the stuff inside. I also use some white vinyl adhesive on top of the box to keep the temperature inside down in the hot desert sun. Now, down to the toolbox and tool tube. The toolbox is a DS-BP Raid toolbox purchased from ADV Motorrad. It works nice to hold a full toolkit, as well as my registration and insurance card. It sits nice in there behind the panniers, and has plenty of room for tire levers, and I tend to carry plenty of tools with me. The lid doesn't seal super well, but it's in the back, so it's never been an issue. If I rode in a rainy climate, or did deep water crossings, I'd probably add some silicone around the edges. For the tool tube, that's just a section of black ABS pipe, cut to length and capped. It houses my tent poles for camping, so they're not getting bent or poking stuff and causing damage. I drilled through it so I can lock the cap on there to keep them in place. Now the rear tire. I've converted this to tubeless, and it's running a Mitas E07 Plus Dakar version. This is a pretty stiff rear tire, and I wouldn't look forward to changing it in the field. Not that I couldn't, but it's a bit of wrestling getting these on and off. On the upside, they last a long time, and handle great on everything I ride. I did like the old E07 a bit better. It had tighter spacing between the lugs, and therefore got fewer cuts in the tire. The new spacing allows sharp rocks to make pretty good cuts between the knobs and the carcass. But the carcass is so thick I'm not worried about it. One note on these tires if you're running tubeless. They do have thick molding whiskers which tend to get trapped between the rim's edge and the sidewall. This will cause air leaks. Before you install them, cut those whiskers off each side of the tire where it's going to be sitting in the rim. If you don't, you'll probably be prying them out later. I've been there and done that. If you do run tubes, it doesn't matter, but I'd probably still do it just to keep the rim mated better to the tire. I did ask Revzilla to reach out to the Mitas rep and see if this could be done at the factory, as many of the BMW GSA guys have been killing them on reviews, complaining about PSI issues. I usually run these between 26 and 31 PSI. I just set them for what I'll be riding overall that day. Higher for highway and lower for loose stuff. You can ride these tires confidently over a pretty wide range of pressures without too much fiddling. On the sealing of the rim, there's a number of ways to do it, and I modified based on what others on ADVrider.com, including older advice from Woody's Wheelworks, was saying. There's also the OutTechs and other kits out there you can use. I first used a flowable silicone windshield adhesive around the spokes. I thought the thin flowable sealant would get down into any small air paths in there. I then used the tougher goop marine adhesive over the flowable silicone. I covered all that up with 2 wraps of 3M 4412N marine tape to hold everything together. The tape's 2 inches wide and covers the dish of the rim pretty well. Several thousand miles later, including washboard and ruts, I've had no PSI issues. I used a smaller than normal 0.327-inch air valve from Napa Auto Parts, which fits in the stock rim tube hole. It's part number 90-426. This means I didn't have to drill out the hole and can throw a tube in easily if I ever have a tire damaged too much to patch or want to run a tube type only tire. If I need better off-road manners, I'd consider going with a narrower rear rim, probably a 3.5-inch down from the stock 4 1/4. Per Woody's, this improves handling and allows for some additional tire size options. Again, please remember my disclaimer. I can't tell you that this modification or any of the others are safe. Tube-type rims are meant to be run with tubes. The last mod is at the tail. I didn't like the extra material down below the number plate. The Tiger has space for those tall international license plates, and on the US plate, it just hangs down and catches dirt and mud. I trimmed it off just above the bottom of the number plate. That removed one reflector, but the others are still there. I added a bit of red reflective tape around the keyhole where you remove the seat. For suspension, the front forks are more capable than the rear shock. The rear would chatter and washboard. With the right tire pressure, and by adjusting the damping screw, as well as the preload, you can tune most but not all of this out. With the Mitas Dakar rear tire, it has to be pretty low on pressure before there's much flex on it. So you need to find the right PSI for the tires you're running. Compare that to the very soft-walled TKC80 up front, and it's more about adjusting for feedback than about absolute PSI. I also think the off-road traction control factors in a bit to the choppiness and washboard, cutting wheel spin right when you slap into the next bump. I like the safety net of the traction control, so I haven't tried running aggressively with the traction control set fully off. In general, carrying more speed smooths things out. Also, click up a gear and lower the revs. This puts the bike into a little bit more lower torque. So if you're running in third gear and running at 5,000 RPMs, it might be choppier than running at fourth gear at the same speed. On the exhaust, I'm still running the stock unit for now, but I'm changing that. I'm really looking for weight savings over sound. For the price, I think Fuel Exhaust out of the UK has a really good set of offerings that are road legal, sound nice, and are way lighter than the monster stock unit that's on there. I've ordered their Slash exhaust in a ceramic black finish. It's a good looking exhaust which will unfortunately be mostly covered up by saddlebags and heat shields. For around $300 shipped to the US depending on the exchange rate and promotions, it's a great upgrade for the money. So that's it, everyone. I'm sure I'll continue to make some tweaks over time, but these are the things I've done, and it's gotten me through some stuff I had no business riding. The bike has over 35,000 miles at this point, and knock on wood, it's running awesome. Please like the video if you find it useful. Also, check out the Everride and Motortrek channels. Those guys make great videos on a regular basis.